Do you want to check out IT Pro TV but aren't ready to commit? We're making a few episodes from our most popular courses free for you to try here on YouTube so you can see what they're all about. Enjoy this episode and head over to ITPro.TV when you're ready to see the full course.
Hello and welcome to another exciting episode here at ITProTV. I'm your host, Aubrey Spurgeon, and this is Windows 10, and we're preparing for that MD-100 exam. And in this episode, we're going to be migrating some user data, and we have Mr. Mike Roderick in the studio to teach us how to do that. So how's it going, Mike?
Oh, it's going great, Aubrey. Thanks for having me. Excited as always to be here. And yeah, we got to worry about that user data, getting it from one system or their old system to the new. That's what this episode is going to be all about. And in particular, we're going to be looking at a utility or tool known as the USMT, or the User State Migration Tool, which is, as the name implies, is a tool that I can use to migrate a user state, meaning their profile, their settings, their data, all of that stuff that they have. You know, and when we look at it in an enterprise environment, or any environment for that matter, we get into scenarios where we need to upgrade an operating system or replace hardware, right? So let's say Aubrey, for example, has her laptop and it's running, say, Windows 8.1, and it's time to move to Windows 10. Now, we might be bringing in a new laptop and that has Windows 10 on it, or I might be wiping her laptop if it supports, it has the requirements to run Windows 10. Maybe I'm just going to wipe her laptop and install Windows 10 on it. Either way, get her to Windows 10. But what about all her stuff? What about all of her settings? You know, her things like your background, all the settings you configured, Office application settings, any application settings for that matter, you know, your documents, your favorites, all of that. You know, if I come in and just hand you a new laptop and say, here you go, time to get to work, it's going to be a little frustrating, right?
It's going to take me time to actually get to work because I'm going to want to set up all that stuff again.
Yeah, you got to go recreate all your bookmarks or remap drives or create shortcuts and all of that. It's just going to add to the already stressful time of learning a new operating system. So we try to ease that migration process from an older to a newer operating system by moving their data along. Anyway, that's the premise behind migrating user data. And the tool that we're going to use to do that in this particular case is going to be the USMT, as I said earlier, or the User State Migration Tool. It's a free tool available from Microsoft, and it's a highly customizable user profile migration tool, or that's how Microsoft is going to talk about or describe the User State Migration Tool. We get it. I guess the first thing we need to do is figure out, where do we get this tool, right?
Yeah.
Let's say you want to start migrating your users. You're getting ready to roll out Windows 10. Windows 7 support is going away or gone, and you want to move over to Windows 10. So you got to worry about moving your users' data. So how do I get this tool? It's actually part of the Windows Assessment and Deployment Kit, or the Windows ADK, which is a free download from Microsoft. Let's take a look here. I'm going to minimize my virtual machine for a second. I've got a page pulled up on docs.microsoft.com, and I'll make sure I put that link for you in the show notes. But this is the User State Migration Tool, and you'll see right here in the middle, it actually says download the Windows ADK. So if I click on that link, that's going to take me over to the download and install the Windows ADK. And the reason I pull this up and take a minute to point this out, because I know you guys can use your favorite search engine and find this download, is I want to make sure we understand that there are many versions of these tools. The ADK is released, a new version of the ADK is released every time we update Windows. So you can see the current download is for Windows 10 version 1809. But if I scroll down, I will see version 1803, 1709, 1703, 1607. There's a ADK for Windows 8, right? So you have to make sure you have the current or the correct version. And it's all about the destination, not the source, right? I said Aubrey's going to be migrating. We're going to be moving her data from her Windows 8 laptop to Windows 10. I don't get the Windows ADK for Windows 8 because the ADK for Windows 8 was built before Windows 10 was out. So it doesn't know where to put things in Windows 10, where Windows 10 stores stuff, how it stores the registry, things like that. You have to get the version based on the destination because it knows about that version of the operating system. And the 1809 version of the ADK, and therefore the 1809 version of the USMT, understands the 1809 version of Windows 10. And it has manifest to understand all of the older operating systems as well. So it's not like it doesn't know anything about Windows 8, right? So it's all about the destination, not the source. Keep that in mind. Download that from Microsoft. Again, when you go and you download the ADK, and I'll go ahead and click on it, you'll see that it's That was incredibly fast, right?
Oh,
It's already
super
done.
fast, yeah.
Yeah, because it didn't really download it.
Okay.
What it does, and I'll run this here, is it has a little setup. And when I execute that, you'll see I have the option to install Windows Assessment and Deployment on this computer or download the entire assessment and deployment. And it saves me disk space. It makes it a little faster because I can choose this and it's just going to reach out to Windows and pull, or Microsoft, and pull just what I want to install, right? But if I'm installing this on a workstation that doesn't have internet access, or I need to do this in offline format, I can download the entire kit and all of the setup files and then launch it offline as well. But by default, it'll run in an online fashion. I'm going to just go ahead and click next to show you the screen, and then we're going to flip over to my VMs where I already have it installed to save us a little bit of time. If I click next, I can choose whether or not to send any data to Microsoft about my experience with the Windows 10 kits. I have to agree to the EULA. Right, and then here I get a list of the different components. And again, the ADK is a toolkit, right? It's a suite of utilities, not just a single tool. And you can see there are several. And what you would do is just check and uncheck the ones that you want to install. If all I need is the user state migration tool, then I can come in here and I can uncheck the rest of these. And the USMT is really small, right? It's 612 megabytes in size, and I could go ahead and choose to install that. The other thing I want to point out while we're here doesn't really come into play for using the USMT, but just to make sure you're aware of it, I think I've talked about it in other shows, the WinPE is no longer included in the Windows ADK. It's a separate download. Where you have to download it separately and install it separately. It ends up in the same place and it works with my Windows ADK. They've broken it up into two separate downloads so they can update them independently, right? They can put out a new version of the ADK and not have to update Windows PE. So just keep that in mind if you don't see it on the list and you're wondering, well, where's the Windows PE? Just do a separate download for that. All right, good for that. I am going to cancel that install. We'll close that and we'll flip back over to our VM. And I'm going to start on my Windows 10 machine. So when we talk about the USMT, it's made up of three parts. There's there's many parts to it actually, right? But there's three main components that we're going to run. There's scan state, there's load state, and then there's the USMT utils, right? Scan state is the part of the USMT that scans the source computer, the one that's responsible for looking at what profiles exist on that machine, that old Windows 8 laptop that we're migrating from, what profiles exist, what applications are there. Let me gather up all the documents, all the settings, all of that stuff, and package it up and get it ready for that migration process. That's scan state. We'll take a look at how we can run that in just a little bit. Then, once we've run scan state and we've gathered up all the settings and documents and everything we want to move or migrate, we go to the destination machine and we run load state. Load state is the other part of the USMT, and this is what pulls the information back down and loads, right, those settings and documents onto that new system. So scan state is responsible for gathering up, load state is responsible for putting it back. I mentioned the third one, USMT utils. This one you won't use as often. It allows me to work with the migration files themselves. Like if I have gathered up all the settings off that Windows 8 machine and put them up in a network share, and I want to verify that that information up in the network share is not corrupt, it's accessible, I could use USMT utils. If I wanted to extract all the PDFs or spreadsheets out of that migration store without actually pulling the settings down to a machine, I could use USMT utils because it's not a directory that I can browse through. When scan state gathers up all that information, it's by default a compressed file. It's a single file that contains all the users on that system's profiles and data and stuff like that. So I can't just double click on it and browse through it. But I can use something like USMT utils if I need to go in there and find particular documents or something like that. All right. So just understand those three components there. Scan state, load state, USMT utils. They are all command line utilities. We'll be running them from, in my case, PowerShell, but PowerShell, command line, or command prompt, whatever you want to do. You will need administrative access on the machine that you are running either scan state or load state on. Right?
Okay.
All right, so those are the main components. And I want to go, I've already installed it on this machine. And by default, when you install it, it goes into C:, and I'll zoom in here as soon as I get to our destination. Program files x86, Windows kits, 10, assessment and deployment kit. And then here I'd see, remember there's multiple components of the ADK. The only one I chose to install is the USMT, but I would see the other ones here as well. But there is my USMT, and there's that path, C:, program files, Windows kits, 10, assessment and deployment. If I double click on USMT, I'll see that there's 3 folders inside there. There's the AMD64, ARM64, and x86. Sure, you can figure out that is the 64-bit version of the tool, the ARM version of the tool, and the x86 version of the tool. So what platform am I running this on? Is it a 32-bit system? Is it a 64-bit system? Will determine which one I use, because they're the same files in each one of these, right? It's 3 duplicates, just different, built for different systems. So inside AMD, I will find, and let me zoom out for just a second, right? I can see there's load state, there's scan state, and way down towards the bottom, I should see USMT utils. You see there's a lot of other supporting files that go along with it, but those are the 3 executables, the utilities that we actually run. Now, we also have some XML files in here. And when we first started this show, said that the USMT is a highly customizable user state migration tool or a profile migration tool. And it's customizable because it relies on XML documents to determine what it is it's supposed to be migrating, right? And these XML documents we can modify, we can make changes to, and therefore we can control the migration process. What is being migrated, what is not being migrated off of that old system to that new system. There's 3 main files that we'll deal with, 4 really, but 3 main ones that we'll see in here. There's MIG app, which you can see right here, right? MIG app is responsible for migrating application settings. So this document tells it how to find and what settings to worry about for different applications. And let me just go ahead and I'm going to open this up with Notepad or something. I should have done WordPad. And I will zoom in for you. Can you read that, Aubrey?
It is, no, it's too tiny.
It's a little small for me as well, and I'm staring right at the screen. How's that?
That's better.
A little bit better?
Yeah.
All right. So this is MIG app, and again, it's the one that's responsible for application settings. So I can see, you don't have to understand every bit of this, not worried about it for the exam. It is, like I said, Microsoft will tell you that these are customizable. They'll recommend that you make copies of them and don't modify the originals. Save those just in case something goes wrong. You're also going to have to try to figure out the syntax they use. XML is easy. It's human readable, but you still have to understand the tags and the way they've laid this out. There's good documentation out there in docs.microsoft.com for making changes to this. But you can see this is telling it, let's see if I can find something that I can actually make sense. Well, here's one for Windows Live Mail, right? So condition negation, yes, there's MIG hopper, there's where the registry keys. So this is how it knows where Windows Live Mail stores the settings in the registry. It's what keys it's supposed to get, right? And what it's supposed to copy. Here's for Adobe Creative Suite, Adobe Photoshop CS, and it first checks to see if the key exists, and then it knows what settings to copy and things like that, all right? So if you needed to, oops, I didn't mean to zoom in there. Forgot we blew up the font. That's MIG app. The other ones are MIG docs, right there, and MIG user, right? So MIG docs and MIG user. MIG docs is responsible for migrating user data based on location. So MIG docs, and let's go ahead and open up MIG docs with Notepad. Let me zoom out so I can see my dialog box. Why you're not letting me? Did I miss my option there?
Maybe because you have both selected?
Oh, you're right. I did.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Well, we'll try. The problem with IE is it's a little bit difficult to zoom in, and I've got all these initial pages that want to load up. So let's get rid of that. And let's just select one. Good call there. Open with Notepad. All right. And here I can see, let's get down to the good stuff. Right, here's your common videos. That's probably not the best one to show you. Component type documents, context user. As I go down, here's my videos, right? And you can see the percent CSIDL, my video, so it's going to use those environment variables to find these locations, but that's what it's doing the migration based on. is the normal locations where our users store their documents. My documents, my pictures, my videos, things like that. All right, so that's MIG docs. And then there's MIG user. And if we pull that one up, right, this is based on extensions or file extensions. So I'm trying to see if I can find something in here. You can still see the locations of where it's looking, but it has these rules that it'll use, and I can't find anything good to show you. Trying to see if I could find a spot where you could see the extension being listed. A lot of this is actually done in another file that it reads from. This MIG XML helper is where a lot of the rules come from as far as the extensions go. Oops, I didn't mean to zoom in there. But that one is based on, it also moves, just like MIG docs, responsible for migrating user data, but it's based on file types rather than locations. So what Microsoft will tell you is use one or the other. And I'll show you what I mean by use them. We have to use them along with scan state and load state to control the process. But you wouldn't use both MIG docs and MIG user because both are responsible for moving users' data. You'll end up duplicating, right?
Okay.
You can move the data twice if you try to use both of them. So if most of your data is stored in the normal locations, if your users don't go outside of my documents and my music and things like that, MIG docs is probably the better one to use. If your users create custom folders outside of those normal locations, a second hard drive, C:, reports, things like that, non-standard locations is what Microsoft likes to call them, then MIG user might be a better one to do because now I can base it on file extension. It won't matter about the location. So use one or the other. There's another one we're going to talk about, which is config.xml. All right? And config.xml doesn't exist by default. We'll end up creating it. And basically, it's a way that we can, again, control the migration process, but it's a lot easier to read, which is a good thing.
Yeah.
We saw those XML files.
Not as easily readable. Yeah.
No, yeah, I mean, it's English. I can see it, I can read it, but I don't know exactly what it means. I'd have to go out to Microsoft and learn how to decipher those files. When we get into the config.xml, I'll show you that it's very easy to understand. You can see the word yes, and you can change it to no to control the migration process. So it's a whole lot easier, and that is the best way to go when it comes to customizing the migration process. All right, so that's a look at USMT and the different components that make it up. I also want to talk about the act of planning, right? We talk about how it's important to have a plan of action, and Microsoft will always recommend that. So let's talk about their recommended plan for using the USMT in case they ask you that on the exam. Plan your migration. Think about, are you going, or step one, they say plan your migration. Are you going to refresh or replace computers? In other words, is Aubrey keeping the same hardware and I'm just wiping Windows 8 and putting on Windows 10? Or am I getting new hardware? I've got a new laptop coming in and we're going to replace, right? And that's going to make a difference because when we use the USMT and we migrate their data, we have a choice as to where we put the data during the migration process. I can take the data off of Aubrey's old laptop and put it up in a network share. And then I can go to her new laptop, connect to that network share and pull the data back down. Or I could use it if a network is not available or I think it'll be faster, maybe it's a lot of information, maybe I use a portable hard drive, a USB-based hard drive. I can do that to move the data from one computer to another. But if I'm doing a refresh where I'm not leaving the hardware, right, we're just blowing it away and installing Windows 10 on the same piece of equipment, I might think about doing something known as a hard link where the data never leaves the system. The Windows will flag all of Aubrey's content and settings and allow me to blow away the operating system, but all the stuff is actually still on the hard drive. And we can reinstall or install Windows 10, right? Blow Windows 8 away, install Windows 10, and then migrate her stuff back, but we're not really migrating because it never left the hard drive, right? It was just kind of flagged and put aside, and now we can migrate it back into Windows 10. And I didn't need to use external storage. I didn't need to use network. So if network and external storage are not an option for you, then hard link might be the way you have to go. And so you're going to have to think about that. That's what they talk, think about planning your migration. Is it online or offline? If the computer's offline, if it's not connected to the network, then network location is not an option, right? I'm going to have to use USB or hard link. Determine what to migrate. on Aubrey's old system, what do I need? Do I want to get everything that she has? Or her music, that's her personal stuff, and it shouldn't have been on the laptop in the first place. I'm okay with her putting it on there, but I'm definitely not migrating it for her. She can you can bring it back tomorrow when I give you your new laptop or something. I don't want to use up network storage migrating her gigs and gigs of music that she actually owns, of course, right?
Of course.
Of course, movies, things like that. What information am I going to be migrating? What applications? Do I want all the Office settings? What about some of those other programs that Aubrey's running? Do I need to get settings for those and migrate them over? Or is it going to be easier just to recreate those settings on the new system? Operating system settings, files, folders, registry keys, all the things that you need to think about. Do I want to migrate? And then we use those XML files to decide, to control the process. Determine where to store the data. I talked about that either remotely or on a USB-based hard drive or doing a hard link. Let's see, also using GenMig. We're going to do the gen config. I'll show you how to do that to create that config file. Create your custom files. As I said, Microsoft recommends that we don't modify the existing XML files. Move those aside, create your own, or leave them there and just make copies of them, name them something else. They don't have to be named MIG app and MIG user. Right? I'll show you when we run our command, we'll tell it the name of the config file that we want to use. So I can call mine my MIG app, or ITProTV user, or something like that. And then I just point it to that config file when we run the utility, when we run scan state and load state. So that'd be step one, all of the planning, making all the decisions of what we need to accomplish this, network access, permissions, right, to write to the network share if that's what we're doing, thinking about things like that. Step two, back up the source computer. We always do that, right? Anytime we're going to make a major change or risk losing data, we want to back it up. Because the last thing I want to do is start going through this process, have something fail, cause some major corruption, and then have to go back to my end user, go back to Aubrey and say, hey, look, all those projects you've been working on for the last 3 months, I lost all of it. I think I'd probably have a flat tire when I went out to my car. Something bad was going to happen to me. So we don't want that, right? We want to make sure that I can get my end user back up and running. I have a rollback plan in case something goes wrong. That means backing up that system. Honestly, I will tell you, I've never had a problem with this utility, but that doesn't mean it won't happen.
But
right?
you never know.
Because now that I've said that, the next time I use it on this show, it will probably fail. All right. Close all running applications, because if USMT is trying to migrate application settings and the applications are running, they could lock certain files and it won't be able to migrate those files. So close any running applications and then run scan state as an administrator. Right? So that was step two. And then step three, install your operating system, either on your new machine if you're doing a transfer, right, a replace, or install Windows 10 on the old system if you're doing a reset or a refresh, or an in-place upgrade or something like that. Well, not an in-place upgrade, because inner settings would still be there. But if you are doing a replace, then you'd be blowing in a wipe and load, blow away Windows 8, install Windows 10, and then migrate those settings back. So install your operating system, install all your applications. If you're migrating Office settings, for example, to the new system, well, the new system needs to have Office installed. It needs to have those registry keys where I can bring in Aubrey's settings. If Office isn't installed, then those registry keys don't exist yet, and I could run into a problem when I try to migrate those settings. Probably won't fail, but Aubrey will launch up Office and go, how come my default font or my normal font has changed? How come it has 5 worksheets instead of the 2 that I configured Excel to do, right? Because we lost all of those settings. All my Photoshop settings are gone. My templates, my watermarks, they're all gone. Where'd they go? Oh, Mike failed. So make sure you install the applications, but close them. They don't need to be running when I'm migrating the settings in, just like they don't need to be running when I'm migrating those settings out. We will run into errors now and again during this process. I can tell you on these machines that I do for this demo, Windows Defender has an issue. There's a particular registry key for Spynet that causes a failure. For some reason, when it tries to move that setting over, it fails. And it causes the whole process to fail just because of that one key not being able to be created. And it's not the end of the world. That particular key is not necessary. I don't need it. I want the rest of the migration to work. So you can use, when you're running load state, you can use /C. And /C tells load state to continue past any non-fatal errors, right? So if the error is not going to cause a fatal issue, then just continue. Just keep going. Log it. I'm assuming you're logging, which we'll show you how to do. And then continue on. And that's what I'm going to have to do in this lab. Otherwise, my lab will fail because it'll get to that one spot. It'll say, oh, I can't do this. Sorry. I'm going to roll everything back and nothing's going to happen. So I'll actually show you the /C. It's a good one to use. Again, it's only non-fatal errors, and it is something that you need to look at, right? If that registry key was important and it was going to cause my system to be out of compliance or cause other problems on my network, then I wouldn't want it to force it to go past the error and ignore it. I'd want to deal with it. But in my case, I researched the problem. I decided that it's not worth the effort to try to fix, and I just use a /C and continue on. Then once you've done all that, you run load state, right? Actually pull those settings back down, either from that USB hard drive or from that network share. And then we're going to log off and log back on, because some of your settings don't actually apply until you log off of the system. Although it's an odd one that Microsoft included, because I'll tell you, the user you're migrating the settings for, like Aubrey, for example, going to this Windows 10 machine, she cannot have logged onto that system ahead of time. If I try to migrate her settings into a Windows 10 machine that she's already logged onto, her profile already exists, and I will get errors and it will fail. So I have to make sure that she's never logged onto the Windows 10 machine before I migrate her settings in, right? So a lot of things to think about as we are planning to do this process. You got to make sure you've got everything you need and to make sure that this process goes smoothly. But once you get all that set up, the actual process of migrating is relatively easy, relatively painless. And because it's command line, I can create scripts to do this as well. So I can create logon scripts that capture users' data the next time they log on, or when they log on or when they log off. I can use scripts to load up their new settings on their new machine that first time we go to run that machine. Maybe a startup script for that computer. We can have it pull down those settings. So there are ways to start automating this process as well. All right, Aubrey, that's probably enough talky. It's time to do the
walkie.
Yes, but I do see that we're a little low on time. So you want to save that for part 2?
Yep, that would be good to do part 2.
All right, let's do that.
All right, let's do it. So this has been Migrate User Data. In this episode, we took a look at all the components we'll be using when we're actually migrating the user data, and we have a better understanding, and we have a plan. So we'll do that in part 2. Be sure to come back. Thank you so much, Mike, for guiding us through that. And thank you all out there for watching. Signing off for ITProTV, I've been your host, Aubrey Spurgeon.
And I'm Mike Roderick.
And we'll see you next time.
Thank you for watching ITProTV.